Mr. Waltz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to build on Mr. Garcia's questions, Director Wray, if ISIS or Al-Qaeda poison through chemical warfare 70 to 80,000 Americans, will we approach that as a law enforcement problem or a military national security problem?
I think we would approach it as all of the above.
You would use, certainly we would use military assets, whether it's cyber, space, what have you. You have the authorization through the authorization use of military force to do so, correct?
That's my understanding.
You would also have the authorization to use military resources against the Sinaloa and Jalisco cartels if you had that authorization use of military force, correct?
I believe so, although now you're getting a little bit out of my area of expertise. But
Would you welcome additional, for example, offensive cyber from Cybercom? Would you welcome those additional resources? We know how to deconstruct cartels, terrorist organizations. We did it in the 90s in Colombia without a single American combat troop on the ground, and we can do it again now. Would you welcome those additional resources?
well, you'll never find an FBI director that won't welcome more
Fair
tools
enough.
in the fight.
All right, just switching, that's good to hear. Just switching tacks. Director Haynes, is ISIS and Al-Qaeda's capability increasing in Afghanistan right now in terms of their capability to attack the West, attack U.S. interests overseas, influence attacks in the United States, or even potentially attack the homeland? Are they increasing?
So I wouldn't characterize them as increasing, although I would say certainly
They still have the
Al-Qaeda,
intent.
And yes, for ISIS-K in particular in Afghanistan, they still have the intent. But we can obviously go further, in closed session on details.
Is our collection capability, have our collection capabilities since the summer of 2021 decreased in Afghanistan and in the surrounding region?
Certainly with the removal of the U.S. troops and presence in Afghanistan, absolutely our, collection day-to-day has decreased, although I think, again, we can talk
We
to
still
you
have the
about-
groups that have the intent to attack us. I'm
But
hearing,
I think we can talk about what our collection posture is vis-a-vis those groups in Afghanistan in closed session, and I think can give you some comfort on that issue.
I'm sorry, Congressman, all I would add is, of course it's true, you're right, our capabilities are not the same as when we had, a lot of presence on the ground. However, as we've all promised you over the last couple of years, we work incredibly hard to try to ensure that we can still take action, as the U.S. government did against Ayman al-Zawahiri.
I'll look forward to the closed session. However, you're going to have a hard time convincing me that managing sources by Zoom or remotely without being on the ground is anywhere near as effective. General Barrier, would the Chinese Communist Party, would Beijing take note if we had an air base a couple hundred miles from their western border?
Yes, I believe they would.
12,000-foot runway that we could potentially stage strategic assets a few hundred miles from their massive nuclear buildup?
Yes, I believe they would.
Do you think, I know this is a bit speculative, do you think if the Chinese had a 12,000-foot runway a few hundred miles from the U.S. border, they would give it up for free?
No.
They would protect that asset, right? But we gave up Bagram Air Base. We no longer have access to that air base. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And the British government's now in negotiations to we could potentially lose asset to Diego Garcia. Would that be significant?
That would be significant.
Finally, Director Wray, can you, you rightly sounded the alarm bell of opening a counterintelligence investigation every 12 hours with the director of MI5. The National Science Foundation's had 1,000% increase in referrals for grant theft, fraud theft, research theft. Yet, you just answer me, I'm out of time, for the record on shutting down the China initiative or rebranding it, renaming it, and at least from many people's perspective, diminishing it in priority. Just get that from the record.
Well, I can't speak to the Justice Department's initiative itself. All I can tell you is that at the FBI, we're not taking our foot off the gas one iota on the threat posed by the Chinese Communist Party, including in the.
But if we're not prosecuting with the same fervor, then that's an issue.
Well, I think we're going to try to use every tool in the toolbox that we have. That'll include criminal prosecutions when we can do that. That'll include other things when we can do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Scott.